In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
The significance of the cards, greater as well as lesser, as it has been delivered through the ages, is often remarkably accurate as far as can be verified. In what way, however, it has come down to us, and what reasonable ground there may be for given meanings, remain mysteries, not to be elucidated by the present author. By verification, we mean theoretical consideration on the basis of both of astrological systematics and of practice of divination. The fact is that the traditional significance is generally in accordance with the astrological explanation of the cards as we have given it here. Although this explanation has not yet been offered by any author before us, as far as we know. So we may conclude that this key has been lost or has been hidden from those who kept the practice alive and left the system to us.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome, everybody, to the Abracast. I'm your card dealer for the evening. My name is John Towers. I represent the house. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is how do they say it? This is the penultimate episode in our tarot card series. So we started with 3 episodes of the Tarot of the Bohemians by Papus, and then we started to get into the Minor Arcana, the 4 houses of the Minor Arcana, and then we did last month the first part of the Major Arcana, the first of the septenaries, and so tonight we're just we're part. We're part 2 of this Major Arcana business, and then we're going to actually get out from under the tarot. Next month will be the last tarot card episode, at least for a while. So, okay, I need to note that this material that we're going through, we're using the same 3 books as we used in the last episode in the same kind of system. So what I did is I had to take parts of 3 of these books and merge them into one coherent thing, and I think I did it pretty good last episode. But this episode we have a little bit of a stumbling block, so I just want to get it out of the way right now. So the 3 books are the Tarot by S.L. Macgregor Mathers, 1896. We went back to the Tarot of the Bohemians, 1896, by Papus. And then we're also using A.E. Thierens, the General Book of the Tarot. So, Papus in the Tarot of the Bohemians has a more complicated system of these septenaries. He has septenaries of 6 cards each, even though a septenary is literally a grouping of 7. And then he's got these 4 cards that he calls the ternary of transition. And it is good stuff. It's good stuff, and it's good stuff to understand, but ultimately it is way more complicated than the system that we are looking at. The system we are presenting here this evening. So also, the Tarot, S.L. Macgregor Mather's book, The Tarot, is skewed more towards the astrological side of it. And that's the side of the tarot that I'm weakest on. So in some specific spots, the tarot cards that Macgregor Mathers is using, because of their like adherence to astrology, he switches some of them around. And two of the switch arounds shows up in this episode, in this septenary. So he switches the places of strength and justice. And I think I did a pretty good job of ironing out the wrinkles, but it is going to pop up in some spaces, especially when we start talking about the astrology of it, that you're going to be able to tell, if you're paying attention, that it's not jiving. And I ironed it out as much as I could, and we're going to go through it, and I'm going to try not to bring too much attention to it. You know, I'm explaining it all right now. So if you are playing along at home, this is the time where I would ask you to grab your vessel of the art. I am using a mason jar right here, and I need you to adhere to the formula and make up your weapon of mass distraction, your jinn jihad here. And go ahead, and I salute you, Seeker. The gathering of the autodactyls commence. All right, so we're talking about the second septenary. And this septenary represents the forging of the self within the context of the collective. These are the ways of cooperation and conflict with other individuals, the collective or the community of individuals, in the physical context of the environment that forms the development of the self. It is the path of self-discovery in the Strength card. It is the seeking of wisdom, the Hermit card. It is the understanding the laws of nature, the Wheel of Fortune. And within that context, the laws of man, justice. There's the Hanged Man is in there, and also it is the severance and transformation of the physical body of the self, which is the Death card, towards the spiritual equilibrium, which is Temperance. Yeah, that one's easy. All right, so here we start off with on the switcheroo, right? We're starting off with the Strength card, which if you're familiar with the weight rider deck, is 8, but we're starting off here, and Macgregor Mathers is starting off with 11, or he figures the strength in the 11th position, I should say. Strength or fortitude. Back in the day, this was also the graphic on the card was a pillar. It was a broken pillar, which I got off on for a little while. Being Boaz, strength, which is one of my golem characters in my comic book. It's a column, and his name is Boaz. He's a stone golem, and Boaz is one of the pillars of the Temple of Solomon. All right, anyhow. Also, as of note, and I'll bring it up later when we get to it, but Crowley, when he did the Thelema deck, when he Toth, when he did the deck of, I think he called it the deck of Toth, he switched strength out to be lust, and we're going to get there. They mention something about that here. All right, the woman crowned with a crown and cap of maintenance, who calmly and without effort closes the jaws of a ferocious lion. She represents strength, power, might, force, and fortitude. Reversed, it's the abuse of power, its overbearingness, and the want of fortitude. There are two ideas expressed by this arcanum: the idea of strength and the idea of vitality. A young girl calmly closes a lion's mouth without any visible effort. The young girl wears the vital sign, like the infinity loop, like the 8 turned on its side. She wears the vital sign upon her head. The 11th arcanum is midway. See, here we go. The midway between the 7th and the 14th. So we're getting into this muddled switcheroo territory. In it, we find the symbolism of the 8th arcanum transformed to the physical plane. It is, in fact, the image of power given by the sacred science when justly applied. So, I feel like a lot of this stuff is negated because of how I rearranged the deck to fit. So, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the Hermit card, which is the 9th card. The old and bearded man wrapped in a mantle and with his head covered with a cowl, bearing in his right hand the lantern of occult science, while in his left hand he holds his magic wand half hidden beneath his cloak. He is prudence, caution, deliberation, reversed as over-prudence. What a prude. And fear. The following ideas are connected with this card: protection, wisdom, and circumspection. The old man walking supported by a stick. He carries before him a lighted lamp, half hidden by the great mantle which envelops him. The symbol is midway between the 6th and 12th card. Protection is indicated by the mantle which envelops the old man. Wisdom by the half-hidden lamp, and the stick indicates that the sage is always armed to fight against injustice or error. By comparing this card with two other cards, the 6th and the 12th, we shall see that the beardless young man in the former has chosen the right path. Experience won and the labor of life has rendered him a prudent old man, and prudence united to wisdom will safely lead him to the higher level which he is anxious to attain. Humanity fulfilling the function of God and the Holy Spirit, the human creative force. Indeed, this is clearly Sagittarius for every astrologer. The author might have mentioned in the same line that he is the Hierophant. Leo represents the God, the sun. The Hebrew letter Thet represents a roof and suggests the idea of safety and protection. Protection ensured by wisdom. Astrologers say the 9th house is the house of the master. The idea of wisdom and protection in one. The master, in fact, shields his disciple like a roof in some way. The sign is of thought power. Creative mind, idealism, which throw their own light onto things below, and consequently the Sagittarian is remarkable for always seeing things in his own light and trying to throw light on things in order to instruct other people. He is the eternal traveler, the walker, and mentally he is always more or less lonely. All of this is very distinctly symbolized in this card of the Hermit, which stands for ideas, perspectives, spiritual or moral influence. and for the light thrown upon the objects in the earth life. In divination, it stands for teachers, legal authorities, advisors, and guides. And with its guiding principle and everything in question in relation to the querent, but above all of his own idealism, the direction in which his thoughts are running. All right, the next one here, card 10. Here, let me this is one of my favorites. The Wheel of Fortune. The wheel of 7 spokes, revolving between 2 uprights. On the ascending side is an animal ascending, and on the descending side is a sort of monkey descending. Both forms are bound to the wheel. Above it is the form of an angel holding a sword in one hand and a crown in the other. It's a very complicated symbol, which much disfigured and has been well restored by Levi. They're talking about Eliphas Levi. It symbolizes fortune, good or bad. Success, unexpected luck, reversed its ill fortune, failure, unexpected ill luck. The 2 principal ideas are expressed by this symbol: the idea of command, of supremacy, and the idea of duration, of the eternal action of time. The wheel of fortune suspended on its axis. To the right, Anubis, the genius of good, ascending to the left. Typhon, the genius of evil, descending. The Sphinx is balanced upon the center of the wheel, holding a sword in its lion's claws. The first idea is expressed by the ternary Anubis, or positive, Typhon, or negative. The balanced Sphinx is the ruler. Okay, so what they're saying is, in the weight deck, there's like a snake thing going down on one side, and there's like a baboon, red monkey, fox thing going up on the other side. And the Sphinx is the midway point, sort of. And this card is tied into Ezekiel, and it's tied into, with the being the wheel, it's tied into the angels of Ezekiel, and then also an angel with the face of a man, an angel with the face of a eagle, an angel with the face of a bull, an angel with the face of a lion. These are, well, if you go back to your different angelic hierarchies and how they're talked about, especially in like a Jewish tradition or whatever, what we're talking about is different aspects of a seraphim. A seraphim is a angel with like 6, it's a massive angel with like 6 wings, and it's got 1 head but 4 faces, and in each face it has is this: it's got a face of a man, it's got a face of an eagle, it's got a face of a bull, and it has a face of a lion. If you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? If you go back to my graphic novel, The Ages, there's a real, I believe, pretty cool part with one of these seraphim in it. If you're ever wondering what's inside a seraphim, it's a good place to start. It expresses the incessant equilibrium which modifies the creative realizations of the septenary by the necessary destruction by death. The 13 card. It represents the course of things according to the ternary law, which directs all the divine manifestations. The 10th card of the tarot commences the negative portion to the second septenary. Expresses the notion of the septenary considered in its reflections. It will see. This is interesting. I'm going to mark this down because I got to come back to that. Reflection. I'll get back to that in a second. It will therefore represent the reflex of will, necessity, the karma of the Hindus, reflects of power and realization, the magic power, the power of will, reflects of the universal soul, force, potential in all its manifestations. Here is potential. Whenever we talk about this, whenever we get into anything slightly occult, we always wind up with this idea of potential. It's very interesting. It symbolizes good fortune or bad fortune. So this means it's happening. In fact, Macgregor or Mathers says, it is indeed to the 10th house that the relations between the self and the not self crystallizes into fact. Papus says, identifying this card with the significance of the Hebrew letter Yod, which it indicates the finger of man and the forefinger extended in the sign of command. This clearly has to do with the significance of the 10th house. You got 10 fingers. It's the 10th house, you got 10 fingers? We're pointing fingers. The commandment itself comes under the same resort. This letter has therefore become an image of potential, manifestation of spiritual duration, and lastly, the eternity of time. In fact, the 10th house of the zodiacal cycle ruled by Saturn has much to do with time and manifestation in time, but not only potential, real as well. The image for this idea is very characteristic, perhaps the most striking of all. The wheel of fortune suspended upon its axis. And to the right, Anubis, the genius of good, ascending. To the left, Typhon, the genius of evil, descending. As the right hand in the east and the left hand in the west, and you will have the illustration of the horoscope. More accurately still, as we know, the East is still standing for the source of spiritual force and inspiration, and the West for the end of it and dying out. What this Sphinx has to do with seems doubtful, unless it means that all mysteries will be revealed in time. And the symbols of the four fixed signs are holding the four corners of the card. The four fixed principles are indeed generally accepted as the basis of the material or concrete world. So they're talking about how now from going forward, these cards start to mirror themselves, which would, to me, makes it seem like this card is also, it's about the Wheel of Fortune, but it's also about balance. You have the orange monkey triangle face going on one side, and you have this golden snake Typhon coming down the other side, and this Sphinx is in the middle. This just seems like another kind of symbol for temperance that we're going to get into, which is the last card of the septenary. So that's just something to think about, I suppose. So we're going to move on. Moving on. Well, I guess since maybe this is a good place to take a break here, right? What do you think? Yeah? All right.
Learn more at theabracast.com. Get graphic elements, notes, worksheets, and text versions of selected episodes, as well as access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing into the mailing list. Get all that, plus exclusive episodes, by supporting the show and becoming a subscriber at subscribestar.com.
All right, back to it. Justice. Now, this is the switcheroo, okay? So there's going to be a little bit of contradictory business in here. And I guess I never realized Justice was a chick. Huh. She's a chick. crowned and seated on a throne between two columns, by the way, holding in her right hand an upright sword, and in her left scales. She symbolizes equilibrium and justice. Balance, justice, reversed its bigotry, want of balance, abuse of justice, over severity, inequality, and bias. The ideas expressed here are the symbols of equilibrium in all of its form, which is interesting because that also is talking about the Wheel of Fortune, right? We just talked about, and also Temperance, which we're going to talk about later. A woman seen full face and wearing an iron coronet is seated upon a throne, and she is placed between the two columns of the temple. The solar cross is traced upon her breast. Here we find the continuation of the symbolism from the second and fifth card. The seated woman occupy the second is the high priestess. The fifth is the hierophant. This is this echo of an echo of an echo of these columns and stuff. Where was I at? Fuck. The seated woman occupies the center between the columns. This is the first idea of the equilibrium between good and evil. Evil! She holds a sword pointed upright in her hand and a balance in her left. Occult science, at first theoretical, has become practical. It has been taught verbally. Now it appears in all the pitilessness of consequence, the terrible for the false magi. It's terrible for the false magi, the sword, but just towards the true initiate, the balance. It signifies of this arcanum, the central between the He and the Kaf, the Hebrew alphabet. This card is the complement of the 11th. So here they're talking, and as of the fifth or the second, and the first septenaries, and all the cards by which, by addition, formed the number 7, completed each other. And the second septenary, all the cards which added together form 19, act in the same way. The 8th card of the tarot represents the conception, the preservative of the second card. It synthesizes in itself the meaning of the second and the fifth card of the tarot. In the divine, God, the Son, the second septenary, the woman fulfilling the function of God, the Son. She is the mother, reflex of the Father, preserver of the God, of the Son, and humanity. Passive laws of the second septenary, justice, reflex of realization and authority. She is the woman of the second septenary. She is nature fulfilling the function of Eve, the elementary existence, the reflex of astral light, preservation of naturata in the world. That's fun to say. The preservation of naturata in the world. Whosoever might hesitate before the emblems of this card and think that it might as well stand in relation with Libra on the account of the ideas of justice generally ascribed to the later sign. And the balance which the woman holds in her left hand will do to consider the systematic relationship between all signs of the zodiac or evolutionary cycle. The left hand derives from, while the right hand is instrumental in giving out. Scorpio derives from Libra in the place and the idea of justice, and the sword of the right hand shows that we have not justice. Pure and simple, platonic, so to speak, but that which has often been called avenging justice, owa fond. It is more vengeance than justice, and Scorpio is famous for its tendency to vengeance. In every way, in every form, after Libra, the stage of total manifestation. The stage is the taking back, the first step on the way home. which explains the well-known feature of desire, thirst, or experience in this sign, because it wishes to bring home something new from the voyage westward. So the card of justice means, above all, the faculty of desire, higher as well as lower, from the most spiritual or religious longing down to the most crude lust. Sexual experience is one of the most important expressions of it. And we may see safely that one of the principal significance of the card is sex. Another principality where sex is sublimated, its occult experience and physical side of earth life in general. Naturally, it stands in close relation to the sign Virgo, and on other hand of balance, in which sensation was born, and the faculty or possibilities of the sensation bringing the desire to release it. It is the sign of transmutation, which is the change of the inner composition by the experience one. The sensation realized makes one feel, actually, bodily, psychically, or morally, the meaning of good and evil. And therefore, the sword of discrimination is the emblem of the right hand of this figure. Every mistake in this process of life will avenge itself with geometrical certainty. It sounds like an awesome band, Geometrical Certainty. This house is the school of life, and is remarkable how concerned the school is in every respect. In this house, the self takes from life and from the cosmos surrounding what it wants. Constantly, it does not yet possess the card of justice, becomes the index of our debts and our possessions of other people. Meanwhile, the balance of the left hand of the figure denotes without the slightest doubt that since Libra is on the left hand, justice must be the 8th card, not the 11th, as some authors have it. So here he's actually talking about the problem I'm having reconciling this. But within this explanation and within this guy's description, the astrological description here, we see that he's linking this justice card to sexual lust, which must be what Crowley was doing. Excuse me, I know. What Crowley was doing when he changed the strength card to lust. It must have something to do with this, I would imagine. I don't know the answers, though. I'm still working on this shit. But that's the kind of fun detail or trail that you can find when you rip this stuff apart and try to put it back together again. If any of you guys know the answer to that or can elaborate at all, please get in contact with me. I would love to know more about it. The next card is the Hanged Man. This extraordinary symbol is almost unintelligible. This is in the double-headed cards. Properly, it represents a man hung head downwards from a sort of gibbet by 1 foot, and his hands are bound behind his back in such a manner that his body forms a triangle that points downwards, and his legs across above it. He symbolizes sacrifice, self-sacrifice, devotion, bound, reversed its selfishness, unbound, and a partial sacrifice. A man hanging on 1 foot by a gibbet, resting upon 2 trees bearing 6 branches which have been cut off. What? All right, if you say so. The man's hands are tied behind his back, and the fold of his arms forms the base of a reversed triangle. And his head forms the point, you see. This The eyes are open, and his hair floats upon the wind, and his right leg crosses his left, and so forms a cross. This young man is, again, the juggler, whose transformations we have already followed in the first, sixth, and seventh arcana. Like the sun placed in the midst of the sign of the zodiac, our young hero again is suspended between two decisions from which will spring no longer his physical future, as in the sixth arcanum, but his spiritual future. The 12th card fills the center between the arcanum of wisdom, which is the 6th card, and the 15th card, which is fatality. These arcana represent the two women of the 6th arcanum regarded in the spiritual sense. This hanged man serves as an example to the presumptuous. His position indicates discipline. Ooh. Here we go, more sex stuff. The absolute submission to which the human owes to the divine. Considered alchemically when the hanged man shows the sign of personality. So think about it, it's just a triangle pointed down, and right out of the top, middle of the top kind of part of the triangle, there's a cross. You can kind of superimpose that right onto this card. I just had a thought, but I don't know enough of, maybe, hold on. The Hermitic grade of the Rosy Cross, or the 18th degree of Freemasonry. This is a Scottish rite when you talk about the 18th degree. One of the signs of recognition, not just the 18th degree, basically everything above the 3rd degree is Scottish rite. Well, there's some Blue Lodge stuff in there too. All right, I'm not getting into all this. One of the signs of recognition consists in the crossing of the legs like those of the hanged man. It is needless to say that the origin and meaning of this sign is quite unknown to Freemasons. Well, for Freemasonry, a lot of Freemasons like to take their pedigree back to the Templars. And if you look at some Templar burial sites, you will see, I don't know what they're called, like the sculptures that go on top of the graves. So it's like some dude's buried under the floor, and they'll put like a sculpture of like a dead dude, like laying there, it's not an effigy, like a memorial or something, I don't know. But they'll carve the representation of these guys, and some of them have their legs crossed, just like this card. So the Freemasons, they might not know about this alchemical business, which, I don't know, is debatable as well. But they probably look at it as like a throwback to some of this old Templar business, that they always try to link themselves to that stuff. The 12th sign of the house, closing the cycle of the zodiac, means the loss to the outer world. Solutions handing over to the results of the one cycle to the following one, whence comes the meaning of treachery in common astrology. This house contains the things which we have not yet mastered, and those who we have failed to understand, or who have failed to understand us. So either this remains for the next cycle, or it will tempt us to waste our last forces. In the eyes of the world, it is seen as of waste, spoil, mishap, and viewed from the other side, it is the sign of the golem, which I've already mentioned in this podcast, in which the outer world loses its importance or even reality and consciousness, and is open to inner truth. It is the reversing of consciousness which makes things change their significance in such a way that it appears upside down to the world. It is now viewed from the other side, and this is the significance of the hanged man. It is also the sign of Judas, who is far from the outer world, is able to judge, did not understand the significance of a Jesus, what it handed him over to his enemies. the most mysterious of the disciples and apparently the fiend within the circle. This always confused me. How, like, I was raised Southern Baptist, and it always confused me about why people were so mad at Judas. I'm like, if Jesus had to die on the cross for all of our sins, then why are you mad at the guy that made that happen? Like, everyone should like Judas a whole lot. That's just me. That's why no one listened to me in Sunday school. That's not even getting into any of the Gospel of Judas stuff or whatever. But in the Christian tradition, he was hanged. He was not hanged upside down, as far as I know. He was actually hanged by his neck. And as Hannibal Lecter asked, how would you like it? Bowels in or bowels out? However his treason or despair was viewed from the other side, it was an act of perversion. The result of human nature being too weak to carry on in this world the heavy load of spiritual revelation or even a mystic message, which till now has never been understood and will never be understood in the profane world. However, this may be... I'm sorry, my nose just got stuffed up automatically. It's a bad part about having a nose that's been busted like 5 times. 5, literally, my nose has been broken 5 times. Is I'm lucky if I get one nostril at a time to work. So I'm sorry if it's interrupting. We may feel pretty sure that none of the others who remained in this world to preach the gospel understood, or let us say rather underwent the message like a Judas who hanged himself. All right, enough of the hanged man, which is also one of my favorites. The hanged man is one of my favorites. To me, the hangman card refers to a card we're going to talk about in the 3rd septenary, which is the lightning struck tower. It's like it mentioned in that thing, like it's the submissive, it's the subjugation, which I think we'll find out that the tower card is all about, like, realizing you're helpless in a situation, like God laughs at your plans, All right, so we're running long, bro. I got to get done with this thing. A skeleton armed with a scythe. Ooh, what we're gonna see? We're gonna see some more set turn stuff in here, I bet. Wherewith he mows down heads in a meadow like grass. He signifies transformation or change, alteration for the worst, reversed its death, just escaped partial change or alteration for the better. It also sounds like Motel Hell, by the way. The ideas expressed by this arcanum are those of destruction, preceding or following regeneration. A skeleton mows down heads in a field from which hands and feet spring up on all sides as the scythe pursues its work. The work of the head, which is conception, becomes immortal as soon as they are realized. The 13th card is explained by the 10th card, which is the fortune card, and by the 16th card, which it stands. The 13th card of the tarot, placed between the invisible and the visible worlds. It is the universal link in nature, which means by which all influences react from one world to the other. It signifies God, the transformer, the universal transforming principle, destructive and creative. The negative of realization or death, the astral light accompanying the function of the creator, the universal plastic force, the balancing death and transforming force. The picture speaks for itself, as indeed most of them do. But still, there is more in it than we might suppose at first sight. Beyond all doubt, it is a sort of allegorical representation of who? Who is it? Father Kronos. Time, who, while creating, consumes his own children, and was very often pictured as a warning of death or remembrance of mortality. Another name for Kronos is Saturn, by the way. But on the other hand, time marks the beginning, and birth is not less under his government than death. Ancient edition of this card shows the figure harvesting heads and limbs of human bodies upon a field. Our death is sort of boring compared to this, but it's interesting. This may be an expression of an old superstition, which is said that those limbs of which men sinned would grow out of his grave, probably a distorted teaching of the law of karma or cosmic reaction, which is also ruled by who? Saturn, at least in the execution. And in this function, he is the old god of Israel. What? What? Whose law was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I think there's a lot of truth here. But Saturn is more. He's a planet of cosmic function, let us say a planet for convenience sake of formation, which means also detrimentation in place and time, limitation and definition. If you want to know more about my thoughts of Saturn, you can pick up my latest graphic novel, The Ages. Excuse me. Let us see what Papus says. He identifies the card with the principle of the Hebrew letter Mem, who is a woman and the companion of a man, and therefore given rise to ideas of fertility and formation. It is preeminently the material and female, the local and plastic. They're not talking about plastic, they're talking about malleability, an image of external or passive action. It is really a great pity that the occultists never realized what he was saying astrologically or cosmically. Mem is one of the three mother letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Saturn is the ruler of the 10th house, which is Capricorn, which as such is called the house of the married woman in Hindu astrology. Now here we go. We're going to wrap it up. We got one more card to go. Temperance. All right. Temperance is an angel with the sign of the sun on her brow. And she is pouring gin from one vessel into another. She represents combination, conformation, uniting, reversed its ill-advised combinations, disunion, clashing interests. The following ideas are expressed in the symbol. The combination of different fluids, like gin and tonic water. Individualization of existence. The genius of the sun pours the fluid of life into the golden vase into a silver one. The essence passes from one vase into another without one drop being spilt. It's like the golden child. The 14th card represents a young girl whom we've already seen in the 11th Arcanum and who we shall see again in the 17th. The genius of the sun holding two cups and pouring from one into the other the liquor which holds life. A winged angel in the sign of the sun upon his forehead, pouring the essence of life from one chalice to another. That's what Papus says. So we're not exactly sure this is a male or a female. Are you assuming my gender, bro? Waite has another version. He says, pours fluid of life from golden vase into silver one. And Papus says, this is evidently the cosmic function next to the sun, the messenger of the same, Mercury or Vulcan, the lord of the sphere of Virgo, surrounding the solar Leo sphere. Other traditions conform it is the symbol of combinations, working incessantly in all regions of nature. And Papus says on his breast the angel bears a square inscribed triangle, reminding us of the passage of the cosmology of the stanzas of Dizan. The three fall into four, which means the beginning of the manifestation. So this triangle of manifestation business, we've seen this over and over again. If you go back to the Lesser Key of Solomon episodes, where we talk about how to do a magic circle. And I'm not like, do a magic circle on felt and roll it on your floor. Trichem. No, it's we talk about how to construct the magic circle, what it has to say, and there's this triangle of manifestation that needs to be off to the east. And if you're quick or you have a good memory, you'll remember here in the context of this septenary of the tarot cards what lies to the east versus the west. It's interesting. Entry of spirit into matter and the reaction of matter upon spirit. Yeah, this is the triangle of manifestation. This is what they're talking about. The entry of a spirit into matter. Come on, bros. So on the subject of this card, there seems to be a perfect understanding. Incarnation of life. Papus adds, this is Mercury, who has to do with the distribution of life currents from the sun farther on into the solar system, and from the heart and the solar plexus farther onto our physical bodies. The golden vase is the silver one, illustrates this distribution from higher to lower regions. So what he's saying here, what Papus is saying, all this stuff, this whole thing that he just said, is about the Kabbalah, the distribution of life currents from the sun farther into the solar system, or from the heart or solar plexus farther into our physical bodies. The golden vase and the silver one illustrate the distribution from higher to lower regions. This is if you go back to our Kabbalistic tree of life, or Kabbalistic episodes, what he's talking about, he's talking about these emanations. There's the no soft, the original thought. It was pure because it was before God had created anything, and is where the pleroma, the Gnostics would call it. It's the area of pureness, and then as this divine or sacred light would bounce through these different lenses or different sephiroths down to the foundation or the material world. This is all they're talking about. This is all Gnostic, or sorry, well, it could be Gnostic Kabbalism, but it's definitely Kabbalism. So this card signifies all sorts of distribution, from the nervous system and its workings, of the coordination to the correspondence by the post office, letters and communications, and latter are not only limited to this physical world, but extended to other planes of existence. It's the function of Mercury, the messenger. It is in the mind, in its concrete activities, and imparts knowledge, learning, which after all is the beginning or potentiality of all of our further relations in this world. I love it when it comes together like that. All right, I'm John. This has been the Abercast. Thank you guys very much. I hope you liked this episode. I sure liked talking to you about it. See ya. All right, y'all. Hey, I just want to remind everybody about Subscribestar/Abercast. There's a brand spanking new Fellow Crafts episode up there. It's all about the many lessons that I've learned so far in Thus Spake Zarathustra, which is a great, very long book by Friedrich Nietzsche. Also want to remind everyone to jump on the mailing list. get on the mailing list, get into the work group, and all of that. Shit, what is it? Okay, so we're wrapping up. We're in the middle. We're trying to wrap up our Goetia episode. So if you sign to the mailing list, you get a bunch of worksheets. But the one, I think the newest one that's up there is the Goetia worksheet. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to do. It's not a substitute for the episodes or the text. It's just something to help keep you in track when you're trying to figure out your high ceremonial magic ritual. And Wednesdays, every Wednesday for now, for the foreseeable future at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing a live episode where I'm chipping away through this Nietzsche book, Thus Spake Zarathustra. So join us there. It has a chat feature, so you can clap and I'll clap back. And one thing that I mentioned, I think in last week's live episode, is this veteran suicide business. So, we got to watch out for these folks, okay? 20 suicides every day by these vets, returning vets. And that is not an ancient number. That number is from April of 2019. So let's keep an eye on our heroes there while they're coming home, trying to figure their life out. Veterans Crisis Line, 1-800-273-8255, press 1. There's also a confidential crisis chat at veteranscrisisline.net, or shoot a text to 838-255, or tell them to do those things. Get them busy, getting their shit straightened out. Okay. Bye. It is an apprentice in the order of the Abercast who now wishes to receive more light by passing to the degree of the fellow craft. He is prepared, worthy, and well qualified, and he is vouched for. Let him enter in the name of the Lord and be received in due form. Yo, bros, John here. Hey, check out this fellow craft preview. This is on Crowley's Liber 4 here. We're talking about section 2 of that book, which is all about the elemental theory of magic. I fucking love this shit. He sort of talks about all the tools and items in the magician's toolbox, and it's super interesting. It's a total of over 139 minutes of content just on this section. There are 3 episodes available for the fellow craft tier on Subscribestar. It's only a $3 tier. There's also 3 episodes about the first section of Liber 4 or Liber APA, and a ton of other exclusive episodes available now only at Subscribestar. And it's the fellow craft tier. There's only one tier. It's just one tier, $3. You get everything. Thank you so much for your support. And this is based on the pyramid of fire, which symbolizes the aspiration of the student concerning the water in the cup. It may be said that it's just as the wand should be perfectly rigid, the ideal solid, so should the water be the ideal fluid. The wand is erect and must extend into infinity, and the surface of the water is flat and must extend into the infinity. One is the line and the other is the plane. But as the wand is weak without breadth, so is the water false without depth. The understanding of the Magus must include all things, and the understanding must be indefinitely profound. Understanding the structuralization of knowledge. The magic cup is the flower, and the lotus which opens to the sun and which collects the dew. It's funny. It's not funny, but it's cool. If you look at Crowley's tarot deck, the Thoth deck, he's got all this flower imagery all over the cups, the cup, the suit of cups. This lotus is in the hand of Isis, the Great Mother, and the symbol similar to the cup in the hand of Our Lady Babylon. There is also the lotuses of the human body according to the Hindu system of physiology. There is a lotus of 3 petals in the sacrum, in which the Kundalini lies asleep. This lotus is the receptacle of reproductive force. There is also the 6th petaled lotus opposite of the navel, which receives the forces which nourish the body. There is also a lotus in the solar plexus, which receives the nervous forces. And the 6th petaled lotus in the heart corresponds to the Tifereth and receives those vital forces which are connected with the blood. The 16-petaled lotus opposite of the larynx receives the nourishment needed by the breath. And the 2-petaled lotus of the pineal gland receives the nourishment needed by thought. Well above the junction of the cranial structure is the sublime lotus of 1,001 petals, which receives the influence from on high, in which in the adept, the awakened Kundalini takes her pleasure with the Lord of all. All of these lotuses are figured by the magic cup. The magic cup must have no lid, yet it must be kept veiled most carefully at all times, except when invocation of the highest is being made. The cup is also hidden from the profane. The wand must be kept secret, lest the profane, fearing it, should succeed in breaking it. The cup, lest wishing to touch it. Woo. The cup, lest wishing to touch it. He should defile it. Thus, ultimately, the wand is a binding and a limitation, so the cup is an expansion into the infinite. This is the danger of the cup and must necessarily be open to all. And yet, if anything to put into it which is out of proportion, unbalanced, or impure, it takes hurt, since the best is the water, but a reflection how tremendously important it becomes. And it should be still. If the cup is shaken, the light will be broken up. Therefore, the cup is placed upon the altar, which is foursquare, will multiplied by will, the confirmation of the will in the magical oath. Its fixation is the law.
Learn more at theabracast.com. Get graphic elements, notes, worksheets, and text versions of selected episodes, as well as access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing into the mailing list. Get all that, plus exclusive episodes, by supporting the show and becoming a subscriber at subscribestar.com.